Did you see that Krista is going to try to attend from Island Institute? Krista Thorpe from Island Institute.
I did see your emails with her.
Yeah, it was a last minute. She just sent it that she's going to try to jump on and share about the connectivity booster.
Did you actually score that, or what happened? Did you get that? Did you get a
real person? I have a MOA and just waiting for the candidate to sign it once we approve it today.
Cool. Look at you go.
You're just as responsible for this one, Ann.
I'm retired from taking credit. Otherwise, I'll have to keep doing stuff.
Credit.
You like that?
I like that.
Got you some money, Daddy.
Hey,
Some walking around money. You can pay bribes. And...
hey, money under the table.
Yeah.
The brown paper bags.
It's coming in a brown paper envelope. Okay. I'm taking minutes. Let's make it quick.
Yeah. First of all, congratulations to Ann getting the seed money. Well done. Well done. Winter Harbor's like, huh? They did?
Yeah. Called working. They should try it.
Yeah.
Can we do a quick introduction on who everybody is, please? Because we have new people.
Sure. Let's go around the table. I'm Bob Bastintown, Chairman of the Broadband Committee, or co-chair.
I'm Ann Lane, Secretary, Interim Secretary of the Broadband Committee. This is a disgruntled member of the population of Winter Harbor who has bad broadband. You want to introduce yourself?
David McIntosh.
Now Sandy's got you on her list. Sandra Claire.
Out back, Roy Gott, co-chair of the committee, Franklin resident, part of the Schoodic Institute, chair of the RSU 24 school board, at least until July.
Is that when your term is up, or are you running again?
That's when they choose the chair every July. They choose.
Okay.
Tom Toll, I'm a resident of Goldsboro.
I sent you like 500 emails this morning between you and Susan.
Oh, you did?
I did because I don't know why you're not getting them.
And on Zoom,
Because your wife sent it.
I've been getting some from Mike.
Okay, good. That's who you're supposed to get them from. Is Mike.
Yep.
Okay, good.
Mike,
Oh, Krista, yay.
Hi, everyone. If now is good, I'm Krista Thorpe. I work at the Island Institute, but I'm also co-chair of the Maine Broadband Coalition Community of Practice, which I'll be able to explain a little bit more about. But both hats are the reason I'm here virtually joining you on the Schoodic Peninsula, and it's fun to see people like having fun in a room and in person. So this meeting's already going well for me.
You should see what's going on outside.
It has to be indoors.
And I think I haven't met Mark. I'm sorry, I haven't met David before, and I didn't quite get who's in the back seat with Roy.
Tom Toll.
Tom Toll. Okay. Hi, Tom. I couldn't tell. I'm Sandy Fortin in Winter Harbor, and will be assisting with the broadband booster locally and working with the youth connectivity through both broadband and the comprehensive planning for Schoodic Peninsula. And that leaves Mike.
And I'm Mike Sommer. I'm a resident of Goldsboro, and I have the dubious distinction of being named a county connector, whatever that means. Mostly what that's meant so far is I pass on emails as I see them. And it looks like I'm also the maintainer of the group email list. Not sure how that happened.
That'll teach you to show how competent you are.
Yeah. I don't know about the competency. It hasn't been proven yet.
It hasn't been disproven, and that's why You're in charge.
All right.
Oh, all right. Well, I had a very light agenda, which I put out about a half an hour or so ago. Essentially, what I'd like to get started is the broadband boot camp or internet boot camp. We can settle on a name. This is to get like the residents involved, rather. Be it children, teenagers, parents, grandparents, to let them know what the internet's all about. Some type of training to get them familiar with it, what it cannot do, what you don't want to do, things like that. So that's where we want to start off. And everybody's welcome. I guess it would be free of charge.
It
for
has to
this.
be.
It has to be free of charge. And that's what I like to see start to happen, because we still have a month, or actually a couple of months before any action is taken. I guess the survey items been sent to the planning board. Has it been approved and submitted to the town selectmen or?
No, in fact, the cutoff hasn't even happened yet for the surveys. They're still trickling in.
Okay,
So I think it's the end of this month. But I'll find out, and I'll find out what some of the issues are, because probably compiling that data is probably gonna fall on me and my staff anyway, if not partly the committee, but at
Yeah.
least.
well, I can see getting involved, everybody get involved, compile the data. Where are we with it? But the questions have been submitted to the townsfolk.
Oh yeah, it went out in the newsletter a couple weeks ago,
Okay, good. And we have gotten a response.
the April newsletter. Yeah, they're coming in. I don't see them. They come into a box
Uh-huh.
in the lobby of the town office,
Okay, great.
but they're coming in, and they're coming in by mail as well.
Excellent. Excellent. The next item I have on the agenda is the RFP.
Bob, before we move on to that,
Sure.
curious, Sandy, what's the status of the survey in Winter Harbor?
Yeah, and just to clarify for Krista, we're talking about the comprehensive planning survey has added in specific broadband questions. The Winter Harbor, we've approved the survey and just getting final dates on when we can launch it. We're hoping in the next 2 weeks to be able to get it printed and start submitting it out with newsletters. So ours has not hit the mail yet. It has not gone public just yet. We'll wait for final confirmation, and the goal is to have responses, I believe it was by mid-June.
Is that why you had your hand up?
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. And just because it was a question that was raised last time, I did check with the district administration about distributing surveys with the students. And after some thought process there, they did not feel that was something that they could support directly. So hopefully we can get that data in other ways. But
Okay. Well, thanks for trying.
Yeah, definitely.
We expected some kind of pushback, maybe, there was a good possibility for that, but
yeah, the real thing is if we send it home with students, it has to be about a program for students directly. So even though this benefits them, it doesn't quite fit that mold. So.
okay. Well,
And just
that's for sure.
I'll update on that youth end of it. Healthy Acadia and Mayan are still interested in reaching out. So they've gone to other forms and just going by word of mouth and public notice with posters. So we are still attempting to get information. We're just not going to go through the school system because it doesn't match what their policy is. But we have so many women in the community that know the youth. So they have just personally been inviting people that they know if they want to participate.
Thank you. All right. Go ahead.
I'd like to hear I'm dying to hear what Krista has to say, because I don't know that much about this, what you've been up to. So,
Yeah, well, I'm excited to hear what you've all been up to as well. I'm glad you're tying comprehensive planning and broadband together. I think it can really strengthen the process. But yeah, part of what I've been up to, as I mentioned, is involvement in a Maine Broadband Coalition initiative called Regional Capacity Building that was originally conceptualized last summer by Andrew Butcher before he moved on in the fall to be appointed as president of the Maine Connectivity Authority. That's going to be the big broadband infrastructure funder in the state moving forward. And so he left the Maine Broadband Coalition, but kind of left this outline of these programs that basically since last November, we've been, Island Institute has been one of the organizations really supporting bringing this together. I'm wondering if it would be helpful if I don't necessarily need to share my screen, but there's a nice blog on the Maine Broadband Coalition website that kind of explains this program now, including with an infographic. And it's a program that Mike Summer is part of because the County Connectors piece that was originally a partnership between AARP and the Maine Broadband Coalition was to just utilize, Maine's broad base of volunteers, the people like you who make everything actually happen, and start putting more of a specific support for broadband around the advocacy and just storytelling, and lots of news, like Mike said, lots of emails coming in constantly about updates on funding, making sure that every county has some people getting information and getting it out, getting it from the state, getting it out. So the County Connectors is a totally volunteer run, grassroots, a little less formal than this other aspect of the regional capacity building program, which is there's a community of practice. So you might hear that phrase, basically people who across the state have been working on regional broadband planning for years, including Island Institute. So we're a member of this community of practice that is made up of 12 different organizations. Sunrise County Economic Corporation is one. Some of you have attended their boot camp. The Lincoln County Regional Planning Commission is one of these members. Franklin County, it's not representing every county. A Rustic Partnership is one of the members, but basically 12 member organizations who the state, Connect Maine and Maine Connectivity Authority, are looking to as people who are on the ground, bringing projects, like supporting communities to get projects from just an idea to an actual funded, really fiber to the home, because that's the state standard at this point, project completion. So it was recognized several months ago that with the huge amount of federal funding that is coming to Maine, capacity was needed at the local level to move things forward. Great, Sandy, thanks for sharing that. Needed to move projects forward kind of faster, on a faster timeline. Maine Connectivity Authority, which is the new agency charged with achieving universal broadband in Maine, is looking to, starting to become a little more public. They haven't been able to be official about it yet, but they're looking to put $100 million out this year across the state. And again, it's kind of the first stage of a multi-year process of getting federal funding and then deploying it. And it's going to, it's out there. It's supposed to solve a $2.5 billion problem. So it's not going to totally solve the problem, but that state investment matched with local funding, matched with, loans, bonds, whatever combination is, it needs to get deployed this year. So in order to do that, the Maine Broadband Coalition is supporting these 12 organizations. This is funded through Connect Maine at this point. Each of these organizations, Island Institute is one of them, gets $10,000. It's a small amount, but it's meant to kind of be really just strategically placed locally. Island Institute works across the whole coast, yes, on the unbridged islands, but also in 140 mainland coastal communities. So we've spent the last couple of months figuring out where do we put our time, our $10,000, 4,000 of which is specifically a stipend to get a connectivity booster, which is what you've heard more of, actually on the ground supporting, like doing the many little tasks that there are to bring especially multiple communities together. It takes more work than necessarily going town by town, but I think, you know, the state is sending the signal that the more towns can work together, the more they'll be able to attract infrastructure funds. So if I haven't confused you too much yet, Island Institute had the chance to kind of figure out of our whole, all the communities on the coast, where is there some momentum where being able to invest our support in the form of this 4,000 for a connectivity booster, and then there's 6,000 that supports a little bit of, you know, staff time for the work I would be doing coordinating with you, and then, but that's kind of a $6,000 bucket that your communities could also pull on for costs that come up related to broadband planning. So we felt really excited actually at the prospect of working more closely with your committees, partly because of the conversations we had with Sandy through the application for an Island Fellow, which is a 2-year, you know, a 2-year fellowship. It was a very competitive competitive group as far as the host sites went. We had a lot of communities applying for a fellow, and I think one of the concerns from the team that had to make decisions on which sites, which communities would get fellows was, you know, wanting to make sure there was a little bit more of a stronger precedent of these multiple communities in your area working together before putting in someone from the outside in an area that maybe didn't have a really strong history of. And again, I don't, that's what I heard from my colleagues. So one of our thoughts was that actually having the connectivity booster supporting you with some extra broadband planning funds could pave that way. And as I think Sandy referenced in an email, make you more competitive for an application for that more full-time support of an Island Fellow in the future. But we feel like the momentum you already have in broadband makes it a promising place to, again, direct some time and resources through this MBC funded program, and really with a hope of like accelerating the process to get you all funding and a partnership for infrastructure like this year, if it's possible. You know, we want to just set our goal high.
Isn't it this year?
I'm sorry?
Are you wanting to go to RFP this year?
Well, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you know, we want to go to RFP this year based upon results from the survey.
Yep.
Have you gotten a feel for the vendors that are most cooperative?
You know, I did one of the ones that you probably know from, or I'm not sure if you've seen anything of the communities Island Institute has worked with. We do work often in communities that have chosen Axiom, and I mentioned your effort just offhand in a check-in with Mark Goulet, the CEO of Axiom, recently. He's doing fiber to the home projects that the community ends up owning the infrastructure, so that long-term it's a revenue generating asset for the community, but it requires the community to bond or do, you know, usually do something pretty big to get that, you know, initial capital. That's a model that Axiom has used, and but they're also now, Island Institute is speaking with Axiom about some bigger, more strategic builds in Washington County that would not be owned by the communities because of just the challenge in financial situations in a lot of those smaller communities. So yeah, Axiom is one that works in a couple different flexible ways, and Mark specifically said, I'd love to talk to those guys. So, and then, you know, we do, CCI is, as frustrating as their, you know, DSL is for people who are in their current footprint, Consolidated is, as you might know, building fiber networks now through their new brand Fidium. And, you know, as far as from the state perspective, they are a better community partner than many of the national companies.
We have a small one in the center of Gouldsboro that they're building for the town office. Because the town office and the women's club, which is where we have a lot of selectmen meetings, a lot of community committee meetings, and the fire department are all together. And we were all having separate bills for stuff. So Consolidated is putting in fiber. Roy knows more technical aspects of it. So, I mean, they came to us with the offer. So they
Great.
seem to at least, they have shown up. I don't know how much more they want to do, but
Well, they built out Long Island in Casco Bay, did fiber to the home there, and were able to attract a $388,000 grant from Connect Maine for that project that is owned by CCI. So that's that shows that the state has looked at their projects favorably as well. So that bodes well, but certainly for Consolidated to be able to make an economic case for universal access, they would need to be working with you toward pursuing subsidies.
Krista, is Baileyville one of those communities that worked with Axiom to buy to own their own lines? Are you aware?
No, Baileyville is part of the Down East Broadband Utility, which is served by Pioneer. But Danny Sullivan, who directs I don't know if it's president or director of the Down East Broadband Utility, is a great person to talk to about their model and how they came to it. But basically they formed a broadband utility district and towns can buy into that. And so it's kind of similar to Mark's Axiom's approach, except that there's kind of a third party, the DBU, running the administration and everything for towns like Calais and Baileyville, Alexandria, and some others that have joined that effort. I think Mark found that unless you were, that for a lot of communities, that's a very similar approach to just owning the network for yourself, but that gave more local control. The ownership of a network at the community level gave more of that long-term control over pricing than what they have over at Down East Broadband Utility.
For context, I was speaking with one of my Maine School Boards Association directors the other day, and he lives in Baileyville, and they contract out the service, the maintenance of the network, but the company owns the lines. And I think for 100 meg internet, he said they paid, I feel like $60 a month. So I just bring that up because it's fiber to the home in each of those cases. And that's it's pretty close to a municipally owned, it's multiple municipalities that form that group. So that might be, and the thought of owning and operating your own utility is a little bit daunting a lot of times, but at least there's a pattern for where it's been done. And I think it's worth keeping in mind.
Yeah, it sounds like you've got, just the committee having conversations with Axiom, Down East Broadband Utility, and CCI are three just top. Yeah, you've got three great options and ability to learn a lot right there. And then there are some other companies as well, but that don't have as clear in your area as clear a track record.
Are you sure you want to go down that path of being your own public utility service? I mean, there's an awful lot to that. There's just from a liability issue. You're a public utility now, but who's going to do the billing? Who's going to do the maintenance? To start, those are the two big things. So is that something small municipalities are ready to take on?
you guys do it, don't you? On the island, Islesboro, you guys do.
Yeah, Islesboro they worked with GWI, and GWI hasn't necessarily replicated this in other areas, but one of the ways, Islesboro, what I was going to say first to, hold on, I need to make sure I took notes in order of who, I have to pull up my notes anyway, so that I can say, the gentleman who was just speaking, was that David?
Bob.
Bob. Okay, sorry, Bob. It's hard to tell through the Zoom. The question that Bob just asked, are we sure you want to do this municipal ownership? That is, from what we've seen, that is just the key to having the survey and community engagement process done to its fullest before really making a decision and saying, because typically there's a lot that comes out through those community engagement processes to help, just similar to the comprehensive planning process, to help you identify what matters to this community for the long term. And what mattered to community members in Islesboro was future proof. Like, they didn't want to have to come back and deal. They were really struggling with terrible internet, probably very similar to most people in your community for years. They didn't want to have to go through this process again. They didn't want to have to, have different speeds at different prices, because they were going to be doing the administration and billing at the town level, and they wanted it to be affordable. So they bill once a year, $360, $30 a month, but they collect it up front along with taxes. It's separate from the taxes, but what's collected in taxes is paying back their revenue bond. But they bill for it up front, and they have a small workforce, but on island, that work with GWI to maintain the network. If anything breaks, they have people who know how to splice fiber. So they've kind of built a workforce component. But yeah, they recognize that it's a huge lift for a small community to do billing and administration. And so that's how they set it up, just streamlined it with their tax processes. Cranberry Isles, soon also Roque Bluffs will have this same system. Southport, Georgetown, Arousic, Monhegan, these are all communities working with Axiom to do municipally owned infrastructure, but Axiom is their contracted provider for all the billing and maintenance of the network. So that's built into their pricing. And I think most of those communities are coming to around $60 or $70 a month for their internet, the internet fees, which end up, baked into that is paying back a bond potentially, and then paying Axiom for maintenance and administration billing. And then Axiom sends back, whatever the community and Axiom agree to in a contract, sends back revenue to the community that, until the bond is paid off, or however you paid for it in the first place, might not make a big revenue dent for you, but certainly after whatever debt was taken on to pay for it, way more revenue is coming back to the community through that model. So yeah, you still, no matter what, you need a public-private partnership, whether it's owned by the community or the internet service provider.
Christy, you said a couple of things I found intriguing without expressing a particular bias here. The idea that it was fiber to every home, that there was a single level of service priced appropriately, so you didn't have all these different tiers to worry about. And there were some local jobs created. Am I correct in that? Even though there might have been a public-private partnership to do some of this, there was some creation of local jobs.
Yep, that was Islesboro's, that Islesboro is a great community. Roger Heinen, who I could put you in touch with just to hear how they structured it. Again, it hasn't been replicated other places, and I think it's maybe because it took the community took a much bigger burden on themselves than communities that are working with Axiom tend to share a little more of that burden, in the sense that Axiom is probably ending up yeah, it makes business sense for Axiom and it has made sense to the communities that have gone that route. But I think, right, Islesboro, everybody has a gigabit symmetrical, which very few people need this day and age. Maybe the aerospace engineer on the island, if there is one, uses that, but they all anticipated that this is what our kids will be using for their robotics homework assignments in 10 years. So they didn't want to have to be back at the drawing table. So yeah.
Sandy, your hand is raised. I don't know if that's old or if that's new. Okay, thank you.
Zoom doesn't take it away. Yeah.
So the broadband connector that
Yeah.
what level of understanding will they have of all the processes? I'm a college student, but I didn't know if it was someone that specifically had participated in this process or was just interested in participating in the process.
I'll pass it over to Sandy in a minute, but I had the chance to kind of do a little interview and meet this particular student who's willing to serve this role. And really what's key to, from what we've seen across many communities, often the missing piece is just a coordinator, somebody who is making sure that information, communicator and coordinator, and then as you get closer to actual infrastructure grant applications, especially when you're working with multiple communities, it's making sure you're up to date on all the requirements, making sure, you have your number of unserved premises clearly defined, things like that, that don't take a lot of prior broadband knowledge. So the person that I met, that Sandy introduced me to, Rhiannon, just seems like an organized, community minded, cares about her community, has interest or is majoring in education. So, looking for professional opportunities to kind of step up into that role of being a community engager and educator. And that's really a perfect fit for this particular role where it's usually, many of you are already doing a lot of these types of tasks, but to do them all well for multiple communities, we haven't seen a lot of communities find the perfect volunteer to take on kind of a whole punch list of tasks. So being able to provide a bit of a stipend and direct support from Island Institute and Maine Broadband Coalition for questions along the way. It's okay to dive into this process without knowing a lot about all the acronyms, but being able to have a really quick line to people with the answers, as well as be recognized. This role is funded by the Connect Maine Authority. So, she or whoever it is can email Peggy with questions about, challenges that your committee has gone through, or, to fact check some stuff like, well, this ISP, this internet service provider told us that they provide this, like, is this true? And being able to have that direct line to the state, and just be a good communicator is, a couple things that will benefit your community, but doesn't have to be a consultant, doesn't have to be someone with an expertise in broadband in order to move the process along a little faster. And I'll let Sandy hop in because that.
Yeah, well said, Krista. That was really the intent of this, is having that person that's going to be able to collectively get us all together on the same page. And with that comes Krista and Island Institute, who have been doing this across the state. So I think the idea is for you and I, especially, Anne, I think you and I have been trying to coordinate a lot of stuff going on. So it's someone to help lift that time and energy that we've all put into this and trying to keep things coordinated and moving forward. This is, at this time, Krista was saying, it is a part-time position. It's basically 1 quarter right now, but she may speak more about what's down the road on that as well. I think it's a great opportunity. I'm very grateful that Island Institute is stepping in and that there are additional funds. And I think with the the technical aspect you're talking about, Anne, I do feel that we have that expertise already sitting in the room with you right there, that kind of know the language of what's going on, and not to mention some of the additional community members who have been at past meetings, not here today. There have been some experts who have handled this type of infrastructure as well. So I hope that answers what you're trying to
Yeah,
get
I
at.
just hadn't talked to you, and we keep passing each other and saying, we need to talk about that. And then we hadn't done it, so I thought maybe now I'll find out. So that's good. No, I mean, because I'm headed into election season, so my time is gonna get lame for a little while, till June anyway, and then I'll be free again. So I just wanted to make sure that you have enough somebodies to help you, and of course, I'm gonna be there to help you, but just know that my day job's cutting into my fun job.
Exactly, yeah.
No, and that's exactly the reason, yeah,
Yeah.
for this kind of role is, you know, that the ball is continuing to, you know,
Yeah.
roll forward, despite everyone's limited capacity. And then, yeah, again, because Andrew Butcher moved on from Maine Broadband Coalition and was appointed by the governor to be president of the Maine Connectivity Authority, they're working on figuring out their how they support planning from this new state agency. And I know that he wants to keep investing in this particular program because it just got started. And I think he really feels like there's all these good people who want to make things better for their communities who are just doing a million other things at the same time. So give a little money and sustain it for someone to kind of coordinate those projects. I've seen it already have an impact in Lincoln County, where I've worked with several broadband committees, and they got a connectivity booster who saves the director of the planning commission from having to attend every committee meeting and select board meeting, because broadband comes up, you know, at a lot of these. So being able to just have that extra person who's hearing what's happening across the communities and fielding questions or noting questions is another possibility. That's what the person in Lincoln County has been doing.
Cool. All right, so next steps. What are we doing now?
What now,
We
Wally?
got walking around money, we got.
Yeah.
we got-
Well, really, I mean, we could do a lot of the background stuff that Christy, you were suggesting. I'm more of the nuts and bolts approach to this. I mean, in the case of Winter Harbor, there's already a service provider that has 70% of the town wired for broadband. Okay, in the case of Gouldsboro, that encompasses all the territories within Gouldsboro, South Gouldsboro, et cetera, et
Much
cetera.
bigger.
It's bigger territory. So there would be a considerable amount to deploy of fiber or whatever the solution is based upon the responses we get back. I'm inclined to go with the current service provider in Winter Harbor only because 70% of the work is done. And in dealing with the powers that be, the selectmen, it's more palatable to continue on that route.
And is
If everybody's looking for gigabit Ethernet, you're not going to use it unless you're doing scientific applications or you're a doctor's office, sending MRIs or, you know, X-rays and things like that, transmitting. I'm not saying it's not going to happen as computers get more powerful and more imaging. Imaging is what eats up your bandwidth than anything else. Email is nothing. Okay. Surfing the web is nothing. Streaming services, yeah, that starts to eat up bandwidth. And if you have streaming services at home right now, along with 4 or 5 other devices, you'll see a lot of pixelating on the images. So I mean, really slowing down. But I think just from the administrative portion of it, I think you're insane. Sorry.
They're a
yeah.
small community.
It's a small, I don't know the population wise, but 500 people, which is not undifferent from
But it's an
Winter Harbor.
island.
It's an island, I understand, it's self-contained, it's physically contained, all right? But,
Well, it seems to me we have to worry about the political practicalities as well as the technological investments we're making. I think the point that I was hearing was we're trying to come up with a future-proof solution, knowing I'm not talking 100 years down the road, but maybe 10 to 15 years down the road. We don't want to have to start this over again.
Yeah.
I happened to be living in Goldsboro when DSL became available, and everybody thought that was great. But here we are 15 years later, and we know that that's insufficient for anything other than email. So having a solution that meets the newly defined federal standard, at least of 100 up, 100 down, would be a minimum, and perhaps something beyond that would make technological sense. Understanding Bob's point, politically, that may not be achievable in a town where 70% of the homes are already wired by one provider.
Who is that one provider?
Spectrum. Okay, and that's because from my understanding, and this is third hand, that some folks that live in Grindstone, which is the money strip, one is a lobbyist for Spectrum, so there's definitely political ramifications involved in that, and that's not something that I'm prepared to go against. However, in talking with Spectrum, their standard now is 200 meg. Okay, they bumped it up statewide. That's their standard offering.
Yeah, download, yep.
Download, only download.
Only download, yeah, it's still like 200 and down, maybe 10, yeah, up. With the technology, talking about technology, future-proofing, the technology as it is, there's gonna be a thing called DOCSIS 4.0. Okay, and that should become available at the end of calendar year 22. Okay, the cable system that has been deployed is already set up for that. DOCSIS 4.0 will give you 1 gig down, 1 gig up, symmetrical bandwidth up and down, and up to probably around 10 gig. If you need more than 10 gig, then you're a special assembly regardless. So I think just in the interest of economics and doing the flow, if it's just building out 30%, and that's based upon what we get back for the survey. You know, some people may have a 1,500-foot driveway, may not make sense. All right, so these are the things to look at, and this is all the information based. I think until we get the information back, and this is my opinion, if anybody differs, please jump in. But until we know what we're dealing with, it's hard to go in direction. I've gotten a recommendation, let's do Starlink. Okay, well, it's gonna cost you about 600 for the equipment, and it's gonna cost you 130 a month. Okay, because they just raised the prices.
9-month wait list, yep.
So I mean, do we want to have multiple vendors to deal with in a given
Well, it's gonna
territory?
work for the whole peninsula.
Yeah, it's got to
not
work
just
for the whole
Winter Harbor.
peninsula. You're absolutely right. Especially if we're going to be responsible to administer it. That's an administration nightmare. You may have 3 vendors that you're dealing with in billing. We're a municipality, we're not a billing company. I mean, let them do what they do. That's their bread and butter.
Well, and
We
I
haven't
think
decided.
to
We're
that
a little- The
point-
carts before the horse now.
Yeah, well,
to that point, one of the things that Krista mentioned is there are different methods that have been employed. There's Baileyville owns the lines, but they contract out their administration and they have their own utility that probably does the billing. But others have things where the billing and the service is contracted out, and that's part of the price. So I think it's premature to rule it out as an option until we know what it looks like. So I would be interested in seeing what, for example, the Down East Broadband, what their model looks like, what it costs them, and just to see what they've been able to accomplish, because I think that would just be good information to have no matter what.
I don't discount anything. going back, if you looked at Maine historically, you had 100 independent telephone companies at one point in history here. And it seems like it's going back in time now with all these different providers. Who owns this, who owns that? There's a lot more to that meets the eye, all right? For this area, for Penobscot, Hancock, Washington County, probably a number of other counties, having your local ISP is wonderful, but where does it go? Once it leaves the county, where does it go? Pretty much Bangor. Bangor's the main hub in this area. So all lines lead to Bangor. And there's another company called Otelco. Okay, Otelco has the backbone. Okay, so everybody meets with their lines coming into Otelco. There's big switches up there, and that puts things on the backbone going to points unknown. But I prefer the KISS method. Keep it simple. I'm not disputing administration of it. If it makes sense, case by case, absolutely. But I would just render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. We're thin stretched right now.
Right, but I mean, we don't have to make this decision right now.
No, I understand, but just planning,
Right, but
just planning, does it make sense to, is it gonna cost a head count?
we're gonna look at every option.
Oh,
You know,
I'm all for, I'm keeping an open eye for everything.
right, okay.
This
I
was,
mean, if it
this
makes
was some
sense,
helpful. This was some helpful context. I might end up wanting to connect you with someone from Southport. They are something like 85% served by Spectrum, but couldn't get Spectrum to build to this one part of town without having to put in a bunch of money. And then their question was, well, why would we put in that money if we know that copper is not the long-term solution? I love the mentioning DSL. Right, we got DSL and we thought this was the thing. Fiber did exist back then, just nobody thought customers were going to have to use, have a fiber to their home. It was just, it felt too far out, but fiber is still, I mean, Mike mentioned a 10 or 15 years down the road. I mean, you don't hear people talk about fiber without saying this is going to last you 30 years minimum. We just the limitless kind of capacity with the things at both ends. So Spectrum is starting to, in new communities where they haven't put any infrastructure yet, they're doing some fiber to the home. Yep.
And to that point, it's incumbent upon communities, whoever ISP provider they select, is to have some type of franchise agreement. Okay. Typically, you can say a tree falls down on the wires. Who's responsible for it? Well, in the franchise agreement, okay, for argument's sake, Spectrum is responsible for it. Spectrum has to respond. Okay. There are certain service level agreements or specifications that each provider would have to give. Okay, and that's part of the RFP process, is to weed out the ones who can't do that. I mean, I've been doing this for 46 years. And there's a lot of gotchas, and fiber to the house is wonderful, depending on what your wiring is like in the house. Okay, that doesn't mean I got fiber going to my demarc, which is the demarcation line. However, inside the house, the wiring is 85 years old or 130 years old. Not going to cut it. All right. So I mean, there's things that have to come into account rather. But I think that the most for communities to protect themselves is some type of franchise agreement with them, which they can charge.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it could be $5 a month. Okay, if you're looking for, and that's a painless way to raise funds. Okay, is it a pass-through charge? In certain instances, it is. But those are aspects to look at. I mean, it's all fun and games until the rubber meets the road. I mean, there's a lot of gotchas out there. It's not that quite cut and dry. It's wonderful. My concern in moving to Winter Harbor was I had a choice of DSL. And I was like, DSL or satellite, which are both not an option. Okay. DSL is dead. And Consolidated, I'm annoyed at Consolidated because they have a responsibility as an ILEC, an independent local exchange carrier. It's incumbent on them, upon them to provide later newer technology. And what's keeping them from doing it? Now they're doing it because, oh God, Spectrum's in my territory. Yeah, competition spurs competition. Okay, and so I want to see what they really do for Gouldsboro. Okay, I think they're still charging a huge amount of money for the bandwidth you're getting, for what you need.
It's better than what we have now.
Absolutely, it's better,
It's
but
temporary
well, they can
until we
do.
have a permanent plan.
But
To that-
they can do better for the community.
Yeah, we need to do better for the town, so.
Yeah.
But I don't want to go down any rabbit holes we don't need to go down just yet.
No, there's plenty
So let's talk
of
about
time for recriminations later. Okay, so.
Sandy, Marie
Yeah,
Claire.
I think, I think going back to Roy's comment about gathering the information, it's really important that our community members are able to make smart, informed decisions and looking at those opportunities. What I wanted to get back to, this has been asked some time ago, Kristen, I didn't know if you could answer. The Maine state of Maine government site actually has listings of utilities and what their services are and et cetera. Do we see that coming down the road for broadband so that it makes it easier for communities to quickly scan and have an idea of what these ISPs are providing?
Let's see, related to broadband utility district. Yeah, I'm not sure if I completely understand, but the question at this point, but I know that Connect Maine has done a lot of work recently on trying to make the path clearer, the roadmap a little clearer for communities looking to. You could form a broadband utility district tomorrow and not have to necessarily do anything with it, but just do file the paperwork and say, hey, these towns, want to work together. It can help attract attention of providers who are suddenly like, oh, you're looking at this from a bigger, the economies of scale piece. But Mid-Coast Internet Coalition formed last year. It's a broadband utility district. They're just a group trying to talk through solutions at this point. And so, yeah, there's that. And then you might also be referring to the broadband intelligence platform, BIP, is going to be available publicly soon. It's the Vetro enabled fiber map with all these different layers statewide, showing all the providers and all the underserved areas. That intelligence platform, that map was used for the most recent infrastructure grant round that's being evaluated right now. And the deadline was that March 20th infrastructure deadline. So they utilize that platform, and I think through that are working out some kinks, but communities should be able to use that resource as a way of answering a lot more questions, maybe all at once, than you can answer through these one-by-one conversations with providers or your own speed testing, although it does incorporate data from the Maine State Speed Test, which I know your communities are all involved with through your current surveying. So that would be a good thing for the connectivity booster to, be point person for learning how to read that map, for instance, something that you all just might not have time for.
You can give them assignments.
Yes, yeah. Next steps regarding that, I think, Sandy, I did send a Google Doc, and I kept most of what you had all drafted for that scope of work and adjusted a couple things. I noticed a whole bunch of the tasks were related to communications, so I just grouped those as, in the outline, sub bullets of basically be your central communications person for this broadband planning effort. But I am still waiting to hear from one team member just to know that that's good to go. And the next step from our end would be that Nick Batista, who's the chair of the governance committee for Maine Broadband Coalition, reads it, signs off on it. I think Sandy is maybe the point person advisor for the connectivity booster, would agree to it, sign off on it. The connectivity booster themselves would sign off, and then Maine Broadband Coalition cuts a check, like just a first check to the booster to get them started and say, we have trust that you're going to move forward with this. And so we're going to give you an installment of the payment up front and then the rest of the payment at the end of the process. And then in the meantime, this committee can draw on planning support and planning funds from Island Institute of essentially up to $6,000 for mailing costs, hosting a forum, renting a space, I don't know, putting toward, paying others, staff who are doing things in your office. So we would kind of just be a funding source for the planning process for you to draw on. And that could happen. Yeah, that could be finalized this week, next week, and we just keep going from there for the next several months.
Krista, can you send me your contact information?
The MOU.
I forwarded it to you,
And
Bob. I
your-
forwarded it to you and Roy just before this meeting.
Yeah, I got it just before the meeting. And Maine Broadband Coalition is still it's an entity that has been grassroots, very coalition based. So it operates under the fiscal agent of the Greater Portland Council of Governments, GPCOG. So that's who would actually send over a payment, but it's an MOU. It's very flexible. So you can read through that, and it references basically coordinating this project with the Maine Broadband Coalition.
Okay. I got a million questions for you.
Yeah, we'll look that over. Feel free to send any questions or comments. I'll put, and I think, yes, Sandy, make sure everybody has my email if they don't already. cthorpe@Island Institute.
Okay, Chris, thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Bob, I'll add one detail to that might answer one of your questions. The Maine Broadband Coalition is the one that's running the RSU 24 survey and this connectivity booster, correct?
Speed test, maybe RSU some.
Speed test, yeah. So it was through that organization and the connection with this particular connectivity booster. They're very engaged in that population as well as in the peninsula. So there was a very strong tie to having that background knowledge going into this role as well.
Mhm. Okay.
Cool. Thank
Which
you.
is so important. We've seen so many projects completely stall out because of the lack of a credible messenger, we call it. The person standing up and saying, this is important for our community, is, unfortunately, is, maybe we have some tendency to, I'm a 10th generation Mainer, I know the guilt in my own family of being like a person from away, which is not what we want to highlight or let necessarily rule the world. But as Mike said, like, there are political considerations here, and when you bring a young person from your own community into the room to say this matters for my ability to live and work in this community in the future, that's that can go so far. And we've seen a lot of broadband efforts not be able to really gain momentum because just not necessarily having the right mix or representation talking about it. So
Mhm, mhm.
good thing.
Yeah, we don't want to let this die.
Yeah.
Definitely don't want to let it die. I mean, to me, when I first came on board, I was given a bunch of material, no exaggeration, this thick, 6 to 8 inches thick, and it was like, no, we're going to do it very, very simple. Really, there's a lot. There's a lot to know, but a lot of it, all these coalitions and everything, it's nice. We have one common goal, and that's to wire Maine. All right. Make it affordable. Okay, those are the missions. High speed, based upon criteria that was given to us, regardless of who the provider was. There's things that we have to do, and it's ubiquitous throughout the state. Now, obviously, issues interior-wise, as opposed to the coastal, we will have different sets of needs for that. But again, it all comes into one. I mean, I'm a firm believer of universality where you can. All right. We don't need to complicate things. We really don't. I've been around long enough to see that doesn't really work. But when you have one cohesive plan, but tailoring it to individual towns, that's where the bread and butter is. So that I'm old school, so.
No, that sounds great. I just noted it's 2:00. I have another meeting I have to hop to,
Yep.
so I'm not gonna stop you all, but really great to meet you. Thank you.
So yeah, I'll be in touch with you. Thank you.
Good. Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Mike. Everyone.
Invaluable. Thank you.
Thank you, Krista.
All right. So I mean, I was given, getting on to the second part of the agenda was RFP. And obviously there are more players than I first identified. If you wish to add more players to the vendor list, we can do that. We can have a list of vendor questions up front before we go to a formal RFP. So you get somebody in from Consolidated. Just general discussion. What are they doing for the community since they're the ILEC in the area? So yes, they would have connectivity to virtually every home in the community. So that gives them a leg up. Okay, the second player would be Spectrum Galactic, because they have 70% of Winter Harbor wired up already. And thirdly, what to me is like we want affordable broadband. What can they do for us price-wise? Spectrum, the Melinda from Spectrum sent me information for low-income families to help out with the monthly charges. I don't want to see inflation on the price of gas impact anything, because do I have a choice between providing internet or filling up my pickup truck? So I mean, those are factors to consider. In essence, what this RFP is to me is, what can you do for us? I mean, everything is driven by revenue. I'm not going to kid anybody. If you don't have the revenue,
Right, but I mean,
you can have grants. You can.
we knew that, but I mean, we're gonna have to have some skin in the game to build it.
Oh,
They're not
absolutely.
just gonna roll in here and build it for us. If they do, we'll be beholden to them forever. So
Well,
we're trying to see what all of our options are. in
we
terms
need to see that, but
So the first thing we need to see is a real connectivity map. Who's got it, who doesn't, for real? And that'll give us the scope of work. I mean, it's not complicated.
So is this, are you talking an RFP to
Eventually
have
build
a
it.
vendor provide a solution?
yeah, that is the
Eventually, we'll
essence.
have to build it. And that'll have to go out as an RFP by, at least in Goldsboro, by municipal ordinance. It has to go that way.
Sure.
There's a lot of times on big projects like this, before you go up with an RFP, you go up with an RFQ. a request
For the quotation,
for quotes,
Right.
or it's more of a request for information,
or if you want to do an RFI,
where
you can do an
Just-
RFI.
just to find out who's
Right.
out there, who's interested, what can you do for us before you actually go up with your
Right,
Mhm.
specs.
right. We actually talked about that before. And so now I think we're just trying to get a course of actions, because we've kind of been all over the place. So yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. And that would definitely come before an RFP. But the RFP is always a living, breathing thing that you're putting together, and you're collecting data as you come into it.
Mhm.
So,
I mean, it's not unusual to have, God, I got more RFPs, RFQs, RFIs done than anything else. I mean, that's
all right, so what do you
getting
need
the
to do?
questions that you want to put together. Normally like an RFQ
Sandy,
will lead to an RFP. So, I mean,
Sandy. When's your
Yes.
person supposed to be on deck?
Given what Krista just shared, it might be, we were hoping for April 22nd, but I think there's 2 other signatures on that document I didn't realize. So we're hoping for May 1st.
Okay,
And if she's already signed the MOA, like I've been sharing information with her to try to get her up to speed,
Right.
because everybody's agreeable, but we just need to have the formal document before we announce and go forward.
now, are they gonna pay this connector themselves? Or-
Correct. We have no financial,
Right,
there's no bookkeeping attached to this gift at all.
okay. Cool.
Other than if we have to request reimbursement for something, like you said, printing or equipment or an event or something, we just
Okay.
submit that through Krista.
Okay.
Yep.
I just have to,
Um,
I just set up an account for this, for the broadband committee, because I'm
Perfect.
gonna be receiving funds for it. So I have that infrastructure in place. I mean, it's not complicated. I'm not gonna make that sound like it was super complicated. I
Yep.
made an account, gave it a number. And the rest is bookkeeping. So whatever, we'll talk.
Yep. Set up next steps, budget wise and event wise or wise, whatever Roy and Bob need for expenses on the committee, and Mike as well. Mike, I want to bring you into this. The idea of this booster is to lift some of the burden. We're all kind of feeling like, we haven't got time to do all these things. How can we use this person as that connector for us? And she will be done with actually, we have an opportunity May 4th and 5th. She will be in the community. So I've put out an ask to see if she could do a meeting with us in person so that we all get introduced to this person. So that would be somewhere in the community, just a couple of hours. And I'll put that out as soon as I hear back what her schedule is looking like.
What's going on the 29th for the water buffalo dinner?
Water buffalo dinner. Just tabled information, the one-page information that we've sent out. So the broadband boot camp and the Northern Light one-pager and RSU 24 adult education or Kathy Johnson, we're going to help out and just give information about the digital equity so that people that don't know much about connectivity can actually learn more about it.
Okay,
And if anybody on the committee here has other valid information or wants to attend that dinner at the Masons Hall and just answer any questions, it's just trying to get people interested in building that awareness so that when it comes time to asking for money or what they want, or asking them to complete the survey. It could be that we just have extra copies of the Gouldsboro survey. I don't think we're going to have the Winter Harbor Comprehensive Plan survey by then. If it is approved, we can have that there and just open it right up to the page that talks about broadband and connectivity.
Mhm.
okay.
I'll be there.
All right. Do you want me to come or what are we doing? We talked about
Yeah,
it before. We didn't talk about it again. Okay. Let me know.
That would be great. Someone from Gouldsboro, someone from Winter Harbor, I think that would be great. And anyone else that wants to attend.
Yeah, when is this and where?
29th at the Masons.
Oh, the Masons.
Yeah,
Oh.
the
At the water buffalo.
Yeah.
At the water buffalo dinner? The water buffalo lunch, okay.
I think it's a spaghetti dinner at this time.
That's the spaghetti dinner.
We're having
Yeah.
Bronco burger.
Ooh.
Um, Bob, you may remember Peter Drinkwater was at the
Of
Winter
course.
Harbor. We started this originally, and he's a Mason at the Mason Hall, and it suggested that we can absolutely use the Masons Hall as a location for community gatherings and that outreach so that people will become a little bit more aware of what we're trying to accomplish.
Okay, I'll be glad to talk too, so.
Yeah, cool.
I can talk.
Nice. Has anyone decided on a message for the newsletter? The deadline is tomorrow for the town's newsletters. If there's any kind of ask or communication about broadband,
For Winter Harbor or for Goldsboro?
both.
Yeah, tell me what, I mean, I pretty much have little say in that, so let me know if you have something, but don't be crazy. We have a lot of stuff too, That's the thing, our newsletter's crammed, everybody wants to put something in there.
From a committee standpoint, do we want to put out an announcement that we are accepting both this grant that came through and also the connectivity booster? That might be these are our steps and this is accomplished.
Well, Letitia Baldwin was at the selectmen's meeting last week when I made that announcement, so I'm sure we will hear about it in the paper. She tends to report that stuff in the paper, so we might as well follow it up with something.
Even
Seems like everybody reads the
sentences would
paper
make
except me.
sense.
Anyway, let me know, because Brianna's particular about getting things in on time.
What was
Mhm.
that, Mike?
I was saying 3 or 4 sentences would make sense just to keep awareness up.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep.
And I'm not sure. So the deadline for registration is tomorrow. Don Carter, who is select board chair in Franklin and also on the Franklin Broadband Committee, sent information that the Hancock County Democrats are hosting a broadband
I saw them.
session as well. And that's Thursday night that it's happening. They asked if anybody's interested to register through their website by sometime tomorrow. So that's just, I'm signed up for that. I will, I don't know if anybody else is interested, but I'll certainly see. Don Snoke, who's headed up the broadband effort in Sullivan, is going to be presenting. So there might be some interesting information there.
Where is it being held?
It's online.
Is it online? Okay.
Can you send the link out or?
I can forward the,
You sent that, didn't you? I feel like I've seen that.
I didn't send it to you. I'll
Somebody
send,
sent it to me. Maybe it was
Yeah,
Mike,
with-
king of email.
I can send a link to their website where you can sign up for it.
Okay.
And just a thought, you know, we're talking about the request for proposals or questions or information. I think one of the things that, you know, when we start compiling those results, whatever we do end up sending out, I think we, like you said, we need to have a sense for the level of service first.
Right.
And then we can send out that call it RFX or whatever it is.
Third
But I think-
derivative.
But I think at that point, we should, as a, not so much as a fallback, but we may want to just, even though it won't be a utility providing information to us, if we could at that point have gotten sort of the framework from what these other communities that did the various levels of ownership of a municipal or an area utility. Maybe we do like
I think Leeds used Axiom.
Yeah.
And Leeds had a very successful broadband rollout. They're not terribly huge.
and I think those would be good, just not to say as a fallback, but just to know what the complete one end of the spectrum would be.
I want to
Yeah.
see all of them.
Because, yeah, you might spend, I'm just gonna throw numbers out there because they're not real numbers, but for comparison. If it costs $250,000 to build out the rest of Winter Harbor with Spectrum, and if it costs, and to whatever level of service, those customers are still at the mercy of Spectrum. But if you can have some level of a community or regional utility, that you could build out the entire town for not much more. I'm not saying that would happen, but I'm just saying
Well, you're gonna know all of our options.
it would be good to know. And you
That's part
might,
of due diligence.
and you might get other towns to join in who are looking to expand broadband at the same time. I know I've tried to plant those seeds in people's minds. I don't know that it really went anywhere, but
It actually makes sense what you're suggesting. Whoever can hop on the bandwagon. You don't want to reinvent the wheel if you don't have to.
well, like I said, if you could have theoretically, if you had one utility, and I just think of this sort of from a district perspective, because school district, now it's going to be legislative district. If you had basically one utility that you could set up that would reach, for example, from Hancock to Student. And
Yeah,
if
why
you could
not?
build out that whole area and you could have it so that those communities, everybody who has a telephone pole within striking distance of their house could have 100 meg symmetrical at least, maybe up to gigabit down the line, who knows what it ends up being, but if you could have that available for $70, $60 a month, I think people would be very interested to support a local utility over a massive conglomerate
I
that,
agree.
I mean, I remember the discussions when Charter and Time Warner Cable were merging. It said, let's merge the two worst utilities in the country for customer service and see what we get. You know, it's like merging Spirit and JetBlue.
I just don't wanna, I don't wanna decide before we know.
Right.
That's just ridiculous.
But I think we should have that when we do this request for information, if we can have that other information side by side, then we'll be in a better position to.
That map she's talking about, I think you remember we talked about that way back, and we were waiting for them to roll it out through Connect Maine. And it didn't come, and it didn't come, and it didn't come, and this was a map that was being created net of the influence of the ISP, so they couldn't say, oh yeah, we have 100 up, 100 down there, no problem, and it's like Dixie cups in a string in the forest. So now this map that they've been working on is real map of what's really available. I don't know what the source is, but they've been working on it for a while, and I was trying to get access to it during the time that I was writing my broadband, you know, for the startup money. And I couldn't get it, so it sounds like it's about to be available, which is gonna save a lot of time if it's what they say it is.
Those are gonna be probably major route maps.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're gonna go across swampland, I mean, just getting from 186 to here. That's a
Wait
perfect
till
example.
later.
Well, you know, whether you do fiber, coax, copper, still the same point from A to B.
Anyway, I'll be interested to see that map.
Yeah.
Once it actually is rolled out.
And providers don't like to give detailed maps.
What do you think about, we talked about doing our own survey once before.
Well, I think we, at the last meeting, not maybe the last meeting, but we had talked about doing an additional survey,
Yeah.
because especially once we found out the questions we could get through.
Because we have money to do it.
So, yeah, I think we absolutely should, and I think,
Plus, we don't have to go through the rigmarole of waiting around for the comprehensive planning committee.
right, I mean, nothing would, and I keep volunteering Gouldsboro because Gouldsboro has the most accessible website, but there's nothing that would prevent the town office from setting up a website, and we could incorporate a survey right there. We have the questions that we
Right,
decided
but I
on
only get the
before.
people that don't have internet, and that's a lot of people.
Right, but I'm just saying, you know, if we're gonna do this survey, we'll make it available in all modes, so it can be a paper, and it could be online as well.
Tied to a leg of a carrier pigeon.
Signed to a leg of a carrier pigeon, if you can find the carrier pigeon. Yeah,
Let's talk about that survey in our next meeting, because I think that would just be so much faster than waiting around for other committees.
Sandy, you, I think, had the most complete list of questions we had settled on before. Can you just forward that back out to the group?
I can do
Send
that.
that to me, Marie Claire.
I can do that.
Very good.
All right, you gonna wrap?
So I think it's a wrap. Just when's their next, when do we want to convene next?
2 weeks? So I'm gonna look at that survey. I should have the money by then, and then I wanna see, I'll find out from Deb when comprehensive planning is gonna pull that stuff out, you know, start compiling that data for Gouldsboro. And you guys don't even have yours out yet. When do you think it'll go out? Have the planets aligned for your board of selectmen to meet?
They meet Monday,
Okay.
and it's questionable whether it will make it to the agenda. They've asked for nothing but budget items for the next couple weeks, so
Well, then
I'm
do
not.
we need their permission to send out a survey? We don't, because they already agreed to be in this committee.
No, for the comprehensive planning, the planning board.
The committee is the peninsula. They're already part of the committee. They agreed to it. We put it right. We don't really need them.
Yeah, I don't think the selectmen had an issue with that. With the
This might
survey.
be quicker for the broadband part of it, so we don't have to wait around for comp planning. Just a thought.
Yeah, I
I
can.
mean, I'll stand in the
I
street and hand them out. I don't care. I will, I'll
It'll
dress
be
up,
ready when it's
however,
ready. Yeah.
I'll be a tater tot, whatever you want.
Yeah, Denny O'Brien's handling the final approval to get it out to the community, but it has to go on the website and get mailed and printed and whatnot. So there's time to get it it just got approved from the committee. So it's at the next
You guys
level of,
farm out your printing, or do you have a home printing shop like we do?
no, we don't have a home printing shop.
I don't think so.
Yeah, no, Denny's working on that right now. We're supposed to have an answer by next Thursday on what the final go-ahead is.
Well, send me your questions and then I'll talk to you about what it would cost for Poolsboro to do it.
What's your newsletter postage? Is it just,
It's, I think it costs me for the whole mailing, $400 bulk.
400? Now that goes to every address in the zip code,
We use the
all your
tax,
zip codes?
yeah, we use the tax collector now, I think, is what they, I don't know, I can find out, but I think it has to do something with the addresses that the tax collector keeps, because they tend to be the most accurate.
Because I know there's, bulk mailing has different rates.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can do bulk mail with specific addresses, or you can do bulk mail to entire zip codes. And
I think it's to the entire zip code, thinking about the way that I pay it out, but before I say I know, let me find out,
and that would just be good to know.
and I'll shoot you.
I don't want to do bulk mailing more than we have to, but it might be something that'd be worth doing one time to every zip code in
It
Poolsboro.
works for us, because let's talk about the constituency of these towns, they like mail. They
I
like
don't know,
mail.
but I don't know about putting a self-addressed stamped envelope on each of those, but
We're not doing it. I'll set it up to come pick them up.
Anne,
Marie.
when you sent when you sent out the comprehensive plan survey, was
Yeah.
there an additional cost? Because that was like a 6
It
to,
went in the newsletter.
so there was no additional cost even with all those pages?
No, sir.
Okay,
No, sir.
cool.
I know, that's why I want to do a mailing, because people dig mail,
of course, if we're, if
Um,
go ahead,
and
Sandy.
they're bringing those surveys back. They are coming like ants to the
One
office.
one caveat to that is summer residents will not get them till like I think it's the second week of May, or at least Cecilia at our post office, she had said most of the people don't have their addresses until that time. So I'm not sure. And that's something we're still trying to figure out too. Is the mailing address actually text? Are they tax payers? Are they people that are registered voters, or are they just somebody that happens to have a PO box at our location? I mean, there are Gouldsboro folks that have a Winter Harbor PO box,
Right.
and they're, so where is it actually going?
I will answer that question when I have an exact answer for it. But I do know for sure that the comp planning survey went into the newsletter because it was a massive mailing, and I got to hear how everyone was suffering so much by putting it together. So my ears are bleeding.
But no additional cost is a huge benefit.
But I wrote the checks myself, so I can tell you exactly. It's the same as any other newsletter.
What's the page size? How many sheets is your newsletter?
This last time it was front and back letter size.
Letter size, how many sheets?
Just one, front and back. But no, actually, I'm sorry, I think it was two. Again, let me look at it. The last time that we did it was when that comp planning survey went out, and I'll tell you the whole size of the entire mail.
The whole survey fit in that?
Well, they let us put it in. Now, we are tight with the mailman, I just point that out.
Attach.
Yeah, it just goes inside, it's folded in half.
Okay. That
You know,
didn't make
there's no
sense.
envelopes or anything like
Right.
that. It just was, it's just like a newsletter. But the cost was not, there's no extra cost for it. But I'll find out more deets and let you know.
Right.
All right, you good, Delia?
Good. We can adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Meeting. Next meeting date.
We put in the newsletter and it was, this committee was gonna meet, I think it was every Thursday, we can get the Thursday or something like that.
Yeah, that is, no,
And
every
Today
other
was.
Tuesday,
unusual.
that's how we were meeting, was every other Tuesday, and then we took a break. Only met one time, and that was this month, but I think now it's gonna start picking up again, like it was to every 2 weeks.
And it's Tuesday.
Yeah, and you'll get, when you're, now that you're on the mailing list, you'll get more mail than you want. And so will Susan, because now she's on my mailing list. All right, are you motioning?
I am making a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
To adjourn. So I can't
Okay,
do it
thank-
next week.
Sandra,
Thanks,
Marie,
Sandy.
Claire, do call me soon. And let me, okay?
We'll go over those details. And Roy and Bob, if you have a to-do list you want to get to us, I'll start adding that to the boosters things to do task list.
Yeah, I think in lieu of waiting for the responses is to do the boot camp, get people aware, and start to bring them on board.
Yeah.
I will put that in the form of a question to you.
I love that. All right, love you, want you.
All right,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Right, thanks.
Yes.
How's it going politicking wise?
Well,